Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here on The Father Show, and I'm your host, Mike Thompson. Today, we've got a fantastic show for you. I have a gentleman that's coming on the show all the way from France. So I didn't have to fly him in. He's joining us right from his home, right on his plate. And we're going to be talking about his book, Apocalypse Daddy. And I'm going to let him explain it, what it's all about, what it means. But we're going to have a fantastic talk, and we're going to talk about fatherhood as always, and the good part about fatherhood. But if you have not subscribed to the show, I ask that you would just click on that subscribe button, subscribe to the show, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you will know whenever we have a new show being uplifted on our YouTube channel. So don't forget and tell somebody else. Let other fathers, male, because you don't have to be a father to enjoy the show, because some of the things that we talk about is not just about fatherhood. It's about being the best man that you can be, all in all. All right? So don't forget, let everybody know about the show. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome Mark Fielding to the show. And I ask that he's going to tell us a little bit about himself and what that he does. And that's a long list of things that he does, but the main thing that he does is he's a great writer, and he's a father of two, if I remember correctly. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mark Fielding. Hey Mark, how you doing?
Hi Mike. Hi Mike. Yeah, thanks for having me. All the way from sunny France. I'm not French, and I'm not going to speak in French. So if you have any French listeners, there's excuse.
They out of luck, huh?
Yeah. I can. Maybe we could do a French version, but for now, it's all in English.
Yeah, that's something we
as
think
you
about.
correctly said, I have two children, and they are French, both born in France. So in my family, I am outnumbered. I'm the only Englishman in a French family.
Oh, but that's okay. And we did a show last week about raising interracial or intercultural kids. And since you the non-Frenchman out of that group, how do you feel, or how do you relate with your kids?
It's a very, very interesting and pertinent question, because my daughter Alice, who recently turned 5, has completely embraced the French culture in the last year, because we've been locked in France and we haven't been allowed to leave France, because normally we would go back to England 3 or 4 times a year and spend time with family and friends over there, which, as we all know, has been taken away from us this last year. So she's really embraced the French culture, the French school, the French language, and it makes things both interesting and a little bit more difficult. As a father, there's a language, not a barrier, but there's a different, she speaks French better than she speaks English. So sometimes when we're talking, she will flick between the languages. So she doesn't know the word in English, she'll turn to look for the word in French. And then I don't understand what the French word is. So we have this blockage of communication sometimes, which is, at the moment, because she's so young, it's just funny and charming and awesome. As she gets older, as we're allowed to travel more, we'll spend more time in England, her English will catch up with her French. So hopefully when she's older, those communication problems won't be as prominent. Luke is only 2, so he can't speak. So we just have a great time with him. But having 2 languages is a gift. It's awesome. Between cultures, we have 2 languages. We have 2 ways to look at life and parenting and all the things which go around that. So it's the good outweighs the occasional communication problem.
Yeah, and I understand that with my wife is Spanish, and sometime when we're talking, she'll say something and I don't quite know what she means totally, even though she says it in English, but it's just she'll say something and it's just like, wait a minute, I have to think before I respond to what she
Yeah.
said. And, she's been here for over 2 decades in the United States, but that language, she speaks both languages. And her family, it does the same thing.
Yeah, I imagine it's the same with you. Sometimes when the literal translations of expressions, so the way that the languages tell stories and the expressions they use. So, for example, one of the favorite ones in our family is do you have the expression over there in the States of when pigs fly to
Right,
mean never going to happen? So
right,
in English, we say when pigs fly. And the French literal translation of that is they don't use pigs, they don't use flying, they use when chicken have teeth. So it means the same thing. It's never going to happen. But sometimes my daughter will say that, or my wife will say that, and for a second, when chicken have teeth. And I exaggerate for comic effect because I do speak French. I've been here a long time, and my French is pretty good. So I manage. I don't get lost as much as I make out. But yeah, it's little moments like that make it very funny, but also very interesting.
yeah. I agree, and you're right. And even like for me, my Spanish is terrible. I knew it to a certain degree at one point because when I was growing up, I have an aunt that is from Spain, so she speaks Spanish, and she taught me a little Spanish. And but when you don't use it over a long span of time, you forget it. And then when you get to my age and you're trying to learn a new language, it's like, really? No.
good,
And
good luck with that.
yeah, and I try, I tell my wife sometimes, well, let's just, we'll, she'll tell me what something is in Spanish, and then I just have to repeat it because, if you tell me and ask me 10 minutes later what you just told me, it's going to be like, wait a minute, what was that? I couldn't tell you in the Man in the Moon.
Yeah,
So,
I know. I hear you.
okay, good. I know it's just not me.
It's not you. There's plenty of us out here.
Yeah.
And I should go back into that because you asked me about what I do and the Apocalypse Daddy, my book, and fatherhood and bilingualism and France and England and all of
Yeah.
and the epidemic, the pandemic, of course. And these all combined together really in my story is that I started writing the Apocalypse Daddy because of the pandemic. It was born out of the rubble of that. My family live in England. Last year, when the lockdowns were announced, I thought, okay, I'm not going to see my family for a while. At the time, they said 15 days, but that turned into a long time, didn't it? So I thought I'd document our life during lockdown. And I started doing that on the first day of lockdown, taking photos, describing the journey, our day-to-day life. And I've written ever since then. It just snowballed from that first day, and the the seed of it, and because I love what you to motivate, inspire, and educate, motivate, inspire for you. And I wanted my blog, to do the same thing for me and my wife and for our kids. I wanted it to be very positive, focus on all of the funny, joyous things that happen on a day-to-day basis, even in the midst of a global pandemic when everything is very negative and pessimistic. I wanted to write something about our family and our kids, which wasn't pessimistic, which is very joyful and optimistic. And that's why I started writing the Apocalypse Daddy. And it's produced a lot of positivity for our family, a lot of inspiration from my fatherhood journey. It's taught me a lot of things which I wouldn't have known otherwise, ways to look at things, ways to be patient with your kids when they're going through a pandemic as well. They have frustration levels, that all of these things which I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't writing day to day about our life,
Now,
our family life.
one of the things that you said, and well, let me ask you this though, before I get to that question. So, do you feel that writing has made you a better father?
Without question. definitely.
Yeah.
I
In what
just
way?
because in the well, I don't know if writing in general would make you a better father, but writing about fatherhood and parenthood and
Yeah.
my children and my life has. Just because when you document what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, all of the things that would normally just fall through the gaps in the floor and you wouldn't remember because you're writing them down and you're putting them on a blog, you see where you can improve. You can see where you're not doing the best that you can. Like if sometimes I'd be writing the blog and energy levels would be down.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have the energy to play with the kids. But because I was tired today. I wasn't okay. I won't be tired tomorrow. If I'm tired, okay, I'll sleep when the kids. So it gives you that insight into what you're not doing optimally, and that why would that if I wasn't writing about our family and about what I was doing with the kids every day? So it definitely made me and makes me a better father.
Yeah, because you would think it's kind of like writing a journal. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It works in the same way. I think that with the journal, because I do some journaling as well, and it brings it brings what works to the surface, and it also brings what's not working to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that like a gratitude journal would focus your mind on what's working and then also what's not working. And in the same way, when you're writing about fatherhood, all of the what's working, the playing, the attention, being there, taking the extra time to go to the park or to go for a run or to take them out on their bikes. And yeah, it really makes you aware of that. And when you're not doing these things, it makes you aware of that as well,
Yeah.
if
And
that makes
one
sense.
of the things that we talked about that you told me and that I really like is the fact that you've done a video for your kids. Can you go into that a little bit?
A video, not a
Or
video, I made a book.
a book. So the book is about a
Yeah,
story
so
that you're leaving for the kids.
it's a letter to my kids. So
Okay.
it's a letter written to my future kids when they're older. I mean, not my future kids, my current kids in the future. Um, but that would be a different book if that happens. It's a
Yeah, you better discuss that with your wife first.
the sequel. No, I had two kids is enough. Wow. Um, it's a letter to my kids when they are older in their future. Just and also for me and my wife to look back on as well and our family. But for my kids when they're older, I don't know how your fathers often have complicated relationships with their fathers, with their
Mm-hmm.
parents, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that this will. Hopefully, I won't have that. But in the future, they can look back and they can see that in that snapshot of time that their mom and dad just did the best better than they could. They did their best and it was a fun time and they'll have those memories to kind of build on their self-visualization of who they are and where they're from. And I think that will help them and me and my wife.
Yeah, and I really have to say that you mentioned it just now, and I think that's a key that you're doing the best that you know how in this present time. And I
Yeah,
know I'm a grandparent now, and had I known some of the things that I know now when I was raising my kids, I could have done a much better job at raising my kids. So it's true. And and I say it on the show all the time, there's no such thing as a perfect parent because that's just not going to happen. But if you are striving to be the best man and the best father that you can be on a daily basis, that's the key, really.
yeah, totally agree. There is definitely no such thing as a perfect parent, and there's not even really such thing as a really good parent. It's just every day, if you're, like you said, striving to be better, to do the best you can, then that's the most important thing. If you're doing that consciously, I mean, it just
Yeah.
being the best, it means you have to be actively pursuing it. You can't just
Right.
settle for what you are. Being the best is an action.
Right.
It's not a state. You have to go
Right.
after it. So if you're
Yeah.
doing that,
Yeah, because it's in
then
any field that you're in. If you're an engineer, if you want to be the best engineer, you're going to study. If you want to be the best doctor, you're going to study. If you want to be the best basketball player, you're going to practice. So to be a best father, you like you said, you have to take action, and it's something
yeah,
that you do on a daily basis, all the time, to be the best father that you can be, and it really the
yeah.
best
And
man.
and some days, yeah, some days are better than others. Some days you achieve more. Some
Yeah.
days you learn more. Some days, you wake up and you go back to bed. But in the day to day, in the long run, you just got to keep striving, as you said.
Yeah. So in your book, now you said so you wrote letters to your kids. Can you go a little bit into that as did you write it like this is for my daughter and this is for my son, or did you kind of group it all together?
It was a daily letter, it, to the family. Not to, so my son was very young, and when the pandemic started, he was not even one, so he wasn't the most engaging participant in in the story. He cried and he went to the toilet and he ate, and that was about it. But it was more, I didn't want to make it just to my daughter, so I just made it to the family. And it was every day I wrote a letter for each day about what we did that day to the family, not just to Alice or Luca.
Yeah, we're good.
But the thing is, now Luca's growing up, I'll have to write another one
Yeah,
to include him more in it.
yeah, and I love that idea. My kids are older, and I was telling my wife about it, and I said, our youngest is what 23, and but I would like to write something to them to leave for them, just to let them know, and I'm gonna do it individually, and that's gonna be six letters, but and
It's a lot
if
of
we count the
work.
grandkids, that'll be nine. But I I look at it because nobody's promised tomorrow, and and you see this on a daily basis, and I want them to know what I feel about them as an individual. Maybe I missed something as they were growing up, but we have a blended family, so it was our youngest. I didn't even meet her till she was 12, and but to be able to let them know how much you care, what they meant to your life, I think it will be huge to
Yeah.
lead them something. So I love what you did with the book, and to be able to lead them something. And I would say part one, because I know there's gonna be multiple books.
Well, and yeah, there's I've got lots of ideas about where I could take it as well. Where almost it's got to a point now where I'm kind of thinking of ways I could always leave them a learning guide, so I could give them all my knowledge into
Yeah,
a
yeah,
blog, and then they could access that when they're older as well. There's lots of ideas and ways to take it. I was speaking to a, a work-life balance coach last week, and she was talking to me about something that she does, where she doesn't write a blog or write a book, but she emails her children. So she's set up an email address for her kids, and they're still young. They don't. I know that kids have mobile phones early, but they're not that old. And she writes them emails every now and again. And when they're older, she's going to give them the email address, give them the password, and there's going to have this big long inbox of
oh,
letters from their mom. And I thought that was people don't always want to dedicate time to writing letters or to writing blogs, but having an email, everyone has email, and
mm-hmm.
everybody writes emails, and they could just set up an account for their kids. And when they're at work, when they're at home, when they're in the office, couple of idle minutes, write a letter to an email to your kids. I thought that was an awesome idea.
Yeah. And you can, with that, you can attach a picture if say you took one for an event that they might have been involved in, and you can share that with them.
Yeah, and I think, as
Yeah.
I was saying earlier, that communicating that message to your children helps you as a parent, as a mother, as a father, to make you aware of what you're doing day to day, the kind of the messages you're sending, the life you're leading, and it all helps.
Hmm. So, what would you tell other men about Apocalypse Daddy? What would be their advantage of reading it and or doing something like it?
So the advantage of doing something like it would allow you to connect both with yourself and your children. But I'm not going to tell people how to be fathers. I'll tell them to read the Apocalypse Daddy because it puts the fun back in fatherhood. So it's a letter to my kids, but it's about the fun moments. It's about the milestones of your children. So those first steps when they're throwing food at the wall, when they're screaming and shouting, and then one moment you're trying to tell them off, and next minute they're making you laugh because they're telling you a stupid joke or asking you a stupid question or a silly question. And not stupid question because there are no stupid questions, as we know.
True.
Um, and those moments, which on a day-to-day basis seem inconsequential, that's where the memories are built, on those funny little moments that you spend. And the Apocalypse Daddy is about those funny, tiny little moments, which we all have every day, that make being a father, make being a parent awesome. It's just fun,
Yeah.
inherently fun.
And
And
you write a
it
blog.
reminds us of that.
And you write a blog as
Yeah, the
well, don't
Apocalypse Daddy.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, theapocalypsedaddy.com. It's the same principle. Yeah, I write about our family life and trying to incorporate a bit of learning into that as well.
Yeah. Now, what would be advantage for other fathers to read this?
Because we spend a lot of time digesting media that is negative and
Hmm.
detrimental to our well-being.
Hmm.
And I read a lot of parenting material, and some of it's really good, but most of it focuses on very important, serious, complicated, or for fathers and mothers, boring things. And the Apocalypse Daddy is just about the fun in parenting. It's about those fun stories that all fathers, all mothers have with their kids.
Yeah.
But I don't think we always take to remember them. I think
Yeah.
they don't have the importance, these little day-to-day occurrences, and I think they should have more importance because those little day-to-day events are what makes our parenting journey. And so, yeah, the Apocalypse Daddy reminds us of that.
Yeah. And I will tell you just, since I'm much older and but the kids will remember. They remember all that fun things. That's one of the things. My dad unfortunately died when I was 13, but I have all the memories of the fun things we used to do, and it would outweigh any negative. And so I applaud you for doing what you're doing and recording it, being in the moment and being a present with your kids and having that joyful time, because I guarantee you they're not going to forget it.
Well, that is good to hear. And I don't want to forget it. So that's perhaps even more reason for me to do it.
Yeah, because this is part of your legacy, for you to be able to. I think every moment that you spend with your kid and when you're really present with your kid is part of your legacy, and they are going to remember you no matter what happened, how long you may be together, and hopefully that's forever, which we know that's not true, but as long as your lifespan is, uh, that they can look back and have all these memories. And when they become parents, they have a better idea how to be a parent.
And that is very, very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what you're doing is very powerful, and it's going to
Oh,
really
thanks.
weigh. It's adding a lot of weight to your kids, and they're going to really appreciate it and know, if nothing else, they know you love them, and that's the most important part.
There you go.
Yeah.
That is after everything's said and done, that is the most important part.
Yeah.
If you know, I have a question for you. You speak to a lot of fathers, so my children are 2 and 5, so I'm quite new to this. I've got a long way to go. What do you think I should know, or what advice could you give me for the next couple of months or the next couple of years, which I should be mindful of when my children start to grow up and reach the age of reason and 7 and 8 and 9 years old? What should I be? Just more of the same, or should I be adapting? What should I be doing, Mike?
Well, you're going to definitely have
Thinking.
to adapt. There's no doubt about that. You know, you got some adaptations coming. But the main thing I would think of off the top of my head is really spend separate time with both of your kids. So you find out what your daughter loves to do and do that with her. I don't, if she wants to have a tea party, fine, have a tea party with your daughter. That's not going to be something your son might want to do, but enjoy that one-on-one time with her. And then as you're, even at 2 years old, your
Yeah,
kid,
he's cool.
your son is going, he has his things that he likes to do, and have that one-on-one time with them. So one of the things I would say from now on is always have a set aside time that you can have one on one with your children. And
That's
that's,
awesome. I'm gonna do that.
yeah, yeah. And that'll make a
Also,
big difference because they need daddy to themselves sometimes.
that's true. There is I would also give my wife a little bit of downtime with the
Yeah.
other child as well. But as you know, and all the other parents know, there's a different dynamic between them and between us when they are both there. The dynamic between them is very different when it's just me and one of them, or the mother
Hmm.
one of them. They're very different creatures,
And don't
and I
forget,
will.
I don't, it's great with the kids, but don't forget that one on one time with your wife. So you got to,
Okay,
and
got
I
it.
know you mentioned, I was reading your bio and you was mentioning, gee, my earpiece fell out, but you were mentioning time management and how important that is. And it really is, because not only do you need to spend time with your kids on a one-on-one basis, but you have to spend time with your wife one-on-one as well.
Yeah, very important. And
Yeah.
I think the last year has made made me even more aware of that than I was before. So I will do that. I need to
Okay.
watch the Father Show more often, Mike, so I can get some awesome advice like this.
Well, that's the really part of the purpose of this show, is to help men be the best men that we can be, and we all learn. I'm 63 years old and I'm still learning. And it's something that I wanted to share with the world, is that we as men have to learn how to be the best that we can be. We as men, we have our flaws, and I know, we everybody has their flaws, but we can be better. But you just gotta want to, you gotta try. And women, honestly, just knowing that you're trying to do better makes a huge difference to them. They're probably gonna love you more just because they see you trying. And I'm sure your wife is just tickled pink to have a man that is willing to write about it, talk about it, and be better about it. So I know she's got to love you to death.
Well, it's true. Yeah, it's true. She does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know she really appreciate that, and that's what I want to show. And you being a young father, what would you say to other young fathers? about fatherhood and being a parent?
Yeah, buckle up, enjoy the ride, get sleep while you can, drink lots of water, stay fit. I think for young, it's very hard for me to give advice to young fathers. What I find is that you have to let go of your past in like a lot of what you did and enjoyed. You have to let go of it and move on to the next sphere of your life, and that isn't always easy to do. And I think that's for young fathers especially, they possibly find it difficult to let go of their former self and become a new man, because it does make you a new man, it does change you fundamentally. And coming making your peace with that is
Hmm.
something which most young fathers do. And also go outside and run. Flexibility is youth. So all young fathers, stay young. You have to look after your body. That's another thing you've got to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
two pieces of advice.
Yeah, well, that's fine. That is fine. Well, unfortunately, Mark, that is the time for us today. But I really want to thank you for being a part of the Father Show and coming on all the way from France and to
Well, thank you.
let us know more about Apocalypse Dad and your blog so that, in this internet age and we can get in touch with you, we can follow you, we can listen to what you're saying and learn from your experience. And, so we don't have to make the same mistake
But
if you
yeah, okay,
make
that's
any.
good. I'll make the mistakes. So,
If you
so
make
at
any.
least one other person doesn't have to. Oh yeah, I make a lot. I think it's important to make mistakes as long as you get up and learn.
Yeah, it's nothing wrong
So
with making mistakes as long as you learn from it. And like you said earlier, you're not repeating it. As long as you want to give up those old habits and start anew, well, that's fine. I mean, like we said earlier, there's no such thing as a perfect parent because there's no such thing
no,
as a perfect person.
that is the truth.
Yeah. So,
But
how can more people get in touch with you and your book?
so it's very easy to get in touch with Apocalypse Daddy. You go to theapocalypsedaddy.com. You can sign up to the newsletter, get news on when the book's coming out. Also follow me on Instagram, the Apocalypse Daddy, or Twitter, Mark Fielding 99. But the best place is theapocalypsedaddy.com. So go to the Apocalypse Daddy, read some of the stories, and drop me an email, drop me a note. Say you like it, say you don't like it. Say I helped, say I didn't. I'd be happy to hear.
Well, I know that book is going to help a lot of fathers. And I really would encourage our listeners to follow your blog and, listen, read it so that you can learn more. And so, Mark, thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the great work in what you're doing as well.
Thank you.
It's going to mean a lot, and your kids are going to be blessed to be able to say, "That's what my daddy. Look what my daddy did."
That's my Apocalypse Daddy.
Well, I will close out the show, but Mark, thank you for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for today, and I want to thank you for joining us here on the Father Show. And like I said earlier, I'm your host, Mike Thompson. So don't forget to tell somebody else. Let them know that, people like Mark are coming on the show and talking about what it is to be a father and the steps that he's taking and what he's leaving behind for his kids. But I think I'm gonna have to get me a new mouse. But anyway, so don't forget to subscribe to the show and hit that notification bell so that you will always know when we drop a new show. All right. So I want to thank you for joining us today. It has been a pleasure. I want to thank Mark Fielding for being a part of that today and being a guest on our show. It's great to have him. So until next week, I want to say be careful, God bless, and I can't wait to see you next week.